Want to hear a shocking statistic about how we manage food in the United States? The federal government estimates 30 to 40% of the entire food supply goes to waste in a year. That's more than 120 billion pounds of food that's thrown out, while millions around the country go hungry. Today, you'll meet a New Jersey man who's mobilized movers around the country to rescue and transport food to food banks that otherwise would go straight in the trash. That's all up next on Still Time for Joy. We're featuring people who have turned pain into purpose is one of the most inspiring parts of the show. Hello, I'm Sandra Levine, host of Still Time for Joy. My guest today is Adam Lowy, founder and executive director of the nonprofit Move for Hunger. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Sandy.
You're welcome. Well, I am so inspired by the work you're doing at Move for Hunger, and we're going to tell people who are watching some ways they could help. But before we do that, just give me a little bit of an overview about the food insecurity issue in the United States and the amount of food that's wasted.
Absolutely. So, unfortunately, 47 million Americans don't know where their next meal is coming from. They're considered food insecure. And really, it affects every single population of people. A lot of people think about the hungry, those that are hungry of maybe it's someone that's homeless or maybe someone that's living in a major city. But hunger really touches every single community. And a lot of folks are working 2, 3 jobs and still don't make enough to make ends meet. At the same time, while so many people are struggling with food insecurity, 38% of the food produced in this country will never be eaten. It ends up in landfills. So there's this kind of challenge where you have this surplus, you have this incredible amount of food that is going to waste for a variety of reasons. And then on the other side, you've got all these people that are struggling. And with what we're seeing out there in the world right now, in terms of rising food prices, in terms of the economy, in terms of wars overseas, we're just seeing these things get a little bit worse.
So there are so many reasons why food is wasted, and we're going to cover several of them, but just start by giving me 1 or 2 reasons. Why is this happening?
Yeah, food waste happens at every stage of the supply chain, whether it be at the farm, on the truck, on its way to the grocery store. When you go to the grocery store and you see that ugly, apple that has the blemish on it, that will get thrown away. I recommend if you're in the grocery store, you pick up that apple, buy that apple, because ugly fruit needs love too. And then where it happens the most is in your own homes, in your own kitchens. This is where the majority of food waste is happening. It could be from expiration dates, right? Best by, use by, sell by, expires on. None of that actually means anything. It could be because you chopped up some peppers for dinner last night and you only needed half of it. And the other half ended up in the trash, or the other half ended up just in a baggie in the refrigerator. I recommend freezing things, right? There's a lot of reasons why food is wasted. And we actually developed a website called zerowastekitchen.org, where you can go and you can find zero waste cooking recipes, storage tips, all sorts of different ways to learn about how to reduce food waste at home. And you should be thinking about that because the average American family of 4 wastes $2,700 worth of food annually. So forget about your tax credit. Just literally stop throwing food in the trash.
Good idea. So your family, starting with your great-grandfather, has been in the moving business for 101 years. And I know when you were much younger, you were in that business too, on the trucks.
Oh, yeah.
So what was your experience? What were your jobs? And what did you see?
First and foremost, I think everyone should have to work on a moving truck for at least a short period in their lives. It builds character. I started probably well before I should have been working at all, sweeping warehouses, sweeping the trucks after the fact. And then I was moving households or companies and carrying conference tables down flights of stairs. It's not glamorous work, but at the same time, you get to meet a lot of different people. You get to see a lot of different places. And for us, we saw all this perfectly good food in pantries that was getting left behind. It was getting thrown away. People didn't know what to do with it. It was a question that came up. What should I do with my food? If you've moved before, maybe you've asked yourself the same question. And that was really that question that triggered starting Move for Hunger. We saw all this food that was available, and really we just started asking people if they wanted to donate that food. We were there anyway. We said, we'd be happy to take your non-perishables. We'll bring it to the food bank free of charge. Food bank was right down the street. Didn't cost us anything extra, didn't cost them anything extra, and we actually solved a problem for the customer. In a month, we collected 300 pounds of food from doing our jobs. There was no nonprofit. I knew nothing about hunger. We were just trying to do a good thing. And that's really how Move for Hunger launched. We saw that this was working. And then I took a tour of my local food bank. And that's really where I started to learn about food insecurity.
So, how has that simple idea to take food that people would otherwise be throwing out and take it to the food bank, how has it grown? What is your organization doing today?
Yeah, I mean, it started with one moving company, right? And now we're at more than 1,200 professional moving companies across the US and Canada. We operate across all 50 states and all of Canada. We expanded to work with relocation management companies. We are working with multifamily housing, property management companies. We have over 500,000 apartment units that when residents give notice that they're moving out, they can donate their food when they move. We've teamed up with food companies and farms, and food is starting to go to waste or approaching expiration. We can pick that food up by the truckload. We got a call from a big banana company out west, and there were 250,000 pounds of bananas that arrived at a port in Los Angeles, still green, but they arrived a day late. So the grocery store rejected the entire load. We got out there within 48 hours, picked up all the bananas, and delivered them to food banks and pantries across the LA region. We see truckloads of food essentially on its way to landfill every single day. And it's our job as an organization, as Move for Hunger, to figure out how do we make sure that the right logistics, the right trucks are in the right place at the right time so we not only can recover that food, but then work with all our food bank and pantry partners across the nation to determine who can take it quickly and get it distributed to families that need it most. And collectively, over the past 16 years, we've now delivered enough food to provide over 50 million meals to families in need.
That is amazing. And I'm just curious, how did you figure out all these logistics?
A lot of it's trial and error. I learned a little bit of it, just being in the moving industry. And I asked my dad and my uncles a lot of questions. And then you start to talk to people. And the bigger we got, the higher level conversations that we've been able to have, working with some of the largest freight and logistics and moving companies in the whole world, and talking to them about how do you manage your supply chain? What tools are you using? What do you do in these situations? How do you estimate what you need, depending on the job? And like, those are the things that we've learned. And I guess I'm just blessed to have had so many great conversations and mentors that have helped guide us within our work throughout the years.
So, before we get into more details about food waste in the United States, I'm sure many listeners already are eager to help. What are perhaps three things they can do to help your organization?
It's really easy to get involved. Moveforhunger.org. You'll find a number of ways, but three simple ones. One, make a donation, support the cause. Every dollar we raise helps Move for Hunger provide 4 meals to families in need. So if we get that call about 250,000 pounds of bananas or a truckload of sausage or even just the ability to pick up food from people moving, we can answer that call quickly and make sure that food gets delivered locally to a family who truly needs it. So please make a tax-deductible donation to support the cause. Number two, host a food drive, right? We do food drives, we do team building events. If you're part of a big company, we'd love to work with you and help you make an impact in your community. And then finally, if you are a runner, a biker, a walker, you can visit moveforhunger.org/run and turn your miles into meals. We actually have bibs at a lot of the sellout races, not only here in the US, but across the globe. And then in addition, if you just want to run your own 5K and raise money for the cause that way, we'd be happy to help support you on your fundraising journey.
And remember that website, moveforhunger.org. I spent quite a lot of time on your website, and there are tons of ways to help. I don't think I've ever seen a nonprofit that gives people so many ways to get involved. So, with inflation now and post pandemic, plus there are government programs that are being cut recently. What are some of those government programs that have been cut, and what has been the impact?
When the COVID pandemic hit 5 years ago at this point, we saw food insecurity increase dramatically. A lot of food banks reported an increase of 40% of new people that they were serving. People have never visited the food bank before in their lives. 5 years later, that need hasn't gone away, right? We thought that maybe it would go up and then come down, and that just hasn't been the reality for a lot of Americans that are struggling. Now we're in a place where food prices are at our all-time high, and our government is cutting funding to SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. There's a lot of confusion about food stamps. Sometimes you hear it in the news of like people say there's fraud, there's abuse. There's not. I mean, it's one of the most well-run, programs out there. It's a safety net. Also, the average benefit is $49.75 per person per week. That rounds down to $7.10 per day. Imagine feeding yourself 3 nutritious meals for $7.10 a day. So the benefits weren't that big to begin with, and now those are being cut as well. And we're not a political organization at all. I don't care what side of the aisle that you sit on, but I think my problem with all politicians is when they talk about cutting programs, they don't offer a replacement, right? So if one party thinks it's better to just send meal boxes to people, great. But we can't take away the only support that these families have without offering some sort of alternative. And unfortunately, that's the situation that literally 47 million Americans are in right now, as the only safety net that's available is being cut.
So, again, I want to just get back a little bit more about why this is happening because are other countries around the world doing a better job with this? I mean, it's just shocking to hear that so much food is wasted.
Well, I mean, first of all, we are the United States. We like to be number one. We are the number one, producer of food waste out there. I think other countries have better protections and laws in the books to prevent food waste. For example, in France, a decade ago, they banned food waste in grocery stores. So that ugly fruit, that ugly apple that I talked about earlier, that's not going to waste. France is either donating it, it's turning it into something that can then be resold or repackaged because now it's been processed in some way. I'd say our grocery stores are getting better, and you're starting to see some laws in the books in states like California and others that are working to really reduce the amount of food waste that occurs. But yeah, the United States definitely lags behind. Also, with a lot of countries, we're a big country, so it's harder to compare what the United States is doing to a country like France, where we are significantly bigger in terms of population size, in terms of distance that food needs to travel. But when you look at the food system as a whole, like it truly is a global food system. In some cases, food is grown in the US, shipped overseas, packaged, shipped back to the US because it's been packaged and processed over there at a much lesser cost, and then it's resold over here. So the cost is higher than had you maybe figured out the system to do it locally, but also depending on the type of that food, the shelf life of that food is significantly shorter when you kind of stretch out all that time that needs to be done. So there's not one solution that you can really do to tackle food waste. But there are things that both individuals can do, governments can do, companies and grocers and farmers can do. And it's going to be those collective actions. I mean, it's billions and billions of dollars worth of food is wasted every year. It's not something that makes sense. And I think now that there's become a little bit more focus on it, you're going to see companies begin to pay more attention, and hopefully we can start to reduce it a bit more here.
And your organization has won some awards. I know you've been on national television. Did you ever imagine when you started this, I think was it in 2009, that it would grow the way it has?
I knew it would grow. I didn't think it would grow as fast or as far reached. The awards are a bonus. Like those aren't things you plan for. But the best part about this whole thing is, if we were to shut our doors tomorrow, which we're not doing, but if we were going to shut our doors tomorrow, you'd have thousands of companies out there that are now thinking about food recovery every day. They've made it part of their daily operations. Nonprofits should exist to solve problems. They shouldn't exist to be around for 100 years. So that's what our goal is. Food waste is a solvable problem. It is a dumb problem as far as I'm concerned. And if we all really work together, we won't eliminate it completely, but we can reduce it to really small levels. Same thing goes with hunger, right? We will never completely eliminate hunger. We'd be naive to think that we could, but we should make sure that we're protecting the most marginalized populations in our country and ensuring as many people have enough to eat as possible. It should not be 47 million Americans struggling. We can do better, and we have to do better.
And Adam, why do you think you're so passionate about this topic?
I mean, no one should go to bed hungry. It doesn't make sense. We are one of the wealthiest nations in the entire world, yet a sixth of our population can't put food in their stomachs. Like, it's not logical. So I don't know if it's the logic. I don't know if it's the empath, but like, I don't want to see anybody go hungry. I've got two little kids at home. I can't imagine them or their friends going to bed without enough to eat. I grew up very fortunate and very blessed. I did not have, go hungry, but I know plenty of families that did. And I just don't want that to be anyone's reality. I don't.
And of course, a lot of people who are struggling with food insecurity are children.
Yeah, it's 1 in 5 children in this country go to bed and they just don't know where their next meal is coming from. And then you go to school, and sometimes there's school lunches or breakfast after the bell, and those things are really important. And then the summertime comes around and kids are out of school, and unless there's a program in place, sometimes those were the only meals those kids were getting during the school year. So again, there's programs in place that are meant to help. They're not always year round. They're not always fully funded. And we're kind of at the whim of, what governments and school systems are doing to ensure that everyone has enough to eat.
And how do you feel when you hear from either individuals or from food banks about how the work you're doing is making a difference, how you quite literally are saving lives? How does that make you feel?
I think helping people is the most selfish thing that anybody can do, because you don't get that feeling from anybody else or for anything else. I know that already this year we fed almost 2 million people. It's only April. Already this year we fed almost 2 million people, and our work is just getting started. We've got big things planned. There's a lot of work to be done, and it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be challenging, but I've got the best team in the world, and they're working hard to ensure we're able to just capture more food and really get it to where it needs to be quickly.
And finally, I saw your father interviewed somewhere online about the work you're doing. I know your family's been in the moving business forever. What does he think about what you've created?
Oh, he's proud. He's also very supportive. He was the person I talked to when I was starting this 16 years ago. And when all my other friends thought I was out of my mind, quitting my fancy marketing job to start a nonprofit involving hunger and moving trucks, like literally everyone thought I was crazy. And he's like, you know what? If you do good things and you're doing it for the right reasons, it will work and it will grow. And you have to have faith in yourself, and you have to have faith in the work that you're doing. It's not that you don't have to work hard, but if you believe in what you're doing and you set out a plan and a strategy, you can make it work. And I've been fortunate to watch my dad build and my uncles build some great businesses over the years, the moving business, included there. But I could have never done what I've done without the support from my family and just them believing in me. It's great. Not everyone has that. I know I'm lucky.
Well, we're lucky to have you doing this work. It's just amazing what you've created. Adam Lowy, founder and executive director of Move for Hunger. Thank you so much for everything you're doing to help the hungry, to get food where it belongs. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
If you found today's show helpful, please share the information with someone who needs it, and follow Still Time for Joy for more practical tips on weathering life's storms, as well as inspiring stories of people who have turned their pain into purpose. Please consider supporting the work that goes into producing the show on Patreon. Follow Sandra Levine Productions on Facebook and YouTube, and learn more at sandralevine.com.